The rain had been falling since morning, not hard, not loud, just steady enough to blur the windows and silence the birds. It was the kind of gray April day that made everything feel a little softer, a little slower. Our old farmhouse creaked like it always did when the wind curled under the eaves, and the smell of wet soil and cedar drifted in through the cracked kitchen window. I'd just come back from the barn, boots thick with mud, and my flannels soaked through at the shoulders. I remember brushing the water from my eyelashes as I stepped into the warmth of the house, the hum of the kettle on the stove filling the quiet like a lullaby. Mom had left that morning, something about a church retreat upstate. She kissed me on the cheek, quick and motherly, her arms full of overnight bags and prayers. I hadn't asked when she'd be back. She'd said Sunday, but I never really believed her timelines. She was always early. Or late. Dad stayed behind. He always did. Said someone had to watch the place, though nothing ever happened here. Just silence, chores, and more silence. He wasn't a talkative man, not unless the weather was severe or something was wrong with the tractor. But there was something in the way he looked at me that day, something slower than usual, almost measured. He was in the den when I came in, the television on mute, his whiskey untouched on the table beside him. He turned to me, eyes slightly red, but not from drink. "Take those boots off," he muttered. I obeyed without thinking. That's what I always did around him. Obeyed. Listened. Waited. There had been a time when I feared him. Not because he was cruel, but because he was quiet in a way that made you fill in the blanks. He was a man of rules. Rules that were never spoken but always understood. Boys don't cry. Boys don't run. Boys don't hold the gaze of other boys for too long. But lately he'd been different. Or maybe I had. The first time it happened, I thought it was a mistake. A touch too long on my shoulder. A hand on my back as I walked past him in the hallway. Nothing you could point to and say, that. But it stayed in my skin longer than it should have. I didn't tell anyone. Who could I tell? Today felt like one of those days. The kind of day where something was going to happen, even if no one said it. "You hungry?" he asked, not looking at me. I shrugged. "A little." I made grilled cheese. He never cooked. Not even when Mom begged him to try. He stood slowly, his tall frame casting a stretched shadow across the tile floor. "Come eat before it gets cold." I followed him into the kitchen. The light above the sink buzzed faintly. The sandwich was already on the plate, cut diagonally, like I used to like it when I was a kid. He gestured for me to sit, and I did. We didn't speak for a moment. I could hear the clock ticking, the fridge humming, the storm pressing against the windows. Then out of nowhere, he said it. "Before Mom returns." He said it with no inflection, no wink, no smile. Just the words. And I didn't know what he meant. Or maybe I did. And that's what terrified me. Was this happening again? Or had it never stopped? I tried to eat the grilled cheese, but every bite tasted like guilt. Or fear. Or both. Dad sat across from me, one hand wrapped around his whiskey glass, the other tapping slowly on the table, index, middle, ring. Index, middle, ring. Like a metronome that only existed to mark my rising anxiety. He didn't touch his sandwich. Just watched me. Not obviously. Not with that wide-eyed hunger you might expect. No, it was subtler than that. Detached. Studious. Like he was testing a theory. The rain outside started to hit harder, pushing in waves against the windows. The wind whistled through the cracks in the window panes, and I shivered, but not from the cold. So, I cleared my throat. "Did Mom say when she'd be back on Sunday?" He looked up, his eyes almost unreadable. No. That was it. No elaboration. No attempt to fill the silence that followed. "She called earlier," he added after a long pause. "Said the roads were slick. Might stay an extra night." I nodded, pretending I was focused on the crust of the sandwich I was peeling apart. I wanted to believe it was just the storm that made everything feel strange. The flickering kitchen light. The slow heartbeat of the refrigerator. The growing heaviness in my chest. But I'd grown up in this house. I knew the difference between bad weather and bad tension. I knew the difference between a father and a man who was thinking too much. Was I thinking too much? Dad stood suddenly, chairs scraping harshly against the linoleum. I'm gonna light a fire. Cold in here. He walked toward the living room, leaving his drink behind. I sat frozen for a moment before finally rising and following him, unsure if it was out of politeness or something else. The den was dimly lit, the only illumination coming from the flickering television screen, some late-night rerun playing with the sound off. He knelt at the hearth, striking a match. The sharp smell of sulfur hit the air as the logs caught flame. The fire crackled, and a faint orange glow began to fill the room. He didn't speak for a while. Just sat back on his heels, staring into the flame. I stood awkwardly in the doorway. You remember when you were 8? He asked suddenly. You got lost at the county fair? My mouth twitched. Yeah. I cried like a baby. You were gone for hours. I searched every goddamn tent, every booth. Almost lost my mind. He chuckled, but it was hollow. And when I finally found you, you were in the petting zoo. Holding that little goat. You remember? I did. Vividly. I'd clung to that animal like it was a lifeline. He'd scooped me up, hugged me so hard it hurt. You looked so scared, he said. I never wanted to see you like that again. I didn't know what to say. Why was he bringing this up now? He turned to look at me. But fear's not always a bad thing, you know? Sometimes, it tells you you're close to something real. I swallowed hard. What are you trying to say? He stood slowly, stepping toward me. I'm saying maybe you don't need to be so afraid is all. I took a step back, just a small one. His eyes flicked down, noticed. A pause stretched between us like a wire pulled tight. Dad, I started, but the word caught in my throat. He didn't touch me. Not yet. He just looked at me, then back at the fire. Look, he said, his voice low. I know what you think. What you've always thought. And I've spent a long time trying to pretend I didn't see it. My mouth went dry. You're not like the others, he continued. You're softer. You think too much. Feel too much. I clenched my fists. That's not. It's not a bad thing, he interrupted. Not to me. The silence that followed was deafening. The fire popped. The storm held outside. I should go upstairs, I said, though my legs didn't move. You don't have to, he said. But I want to. That time, I turned and walked. My boots echoed on the steps like gunshots. Upstairs, everything felt colder. I shut the door to my room, leaned against it, and tried to breathe. My heart was hammering. I didn't know what he was implying. Or maybe I did. And maybe, part of me didn't want to stop him. What the hell was wrong with me? I threw myself on the bed, staring at the water stains on the ceiling. I thought of everything I'd buried over the years. The glances in locker rooms. The accidental brushes of skin. The ache in my chest when a guy hugged me too long. But this wasn't high school. This wasn't confusion. This was my father. And yet, there had been times. Moments. When I'd caught him watching me from the doorway. When I'd walked in on him late at night, shirtless, drunk, sitting alone in the dark. Moments when his hand would linger an extra second on my neck. When his eyes would drop to my mouth and then snap away. It was easy to write off. Easy to ignore. But now it wasn't. I heard the floorboard creak outside my room. Then a soft knock. My breath hitched. I said nothing. The door opened anyway. He stood in the doorway, backlit by the hallway light, casting his face in shadow. Just wanted to check on you, he said. I nodded. He stepped inside and closed the door behind him. The air changed. It thickened. Became hard to swallow. You ever wonder, he said quietly, why we want the things we shouldn't? My voice came out hoarse. All the time. He sat on the edge of the bed, not touching me. Just sitting there, looking down at the floor like he was waiting for something. Mom doesn't know me, he said. Not really. Never has. I didn't respond. He looked at me finally. His voice was just above a whisper. Do you? I stared at him, unable to look away. He reached out, slowly, hand trembling slightly, and brushed a strand of hair from my forehead. Dad. Just this once, he whispered. Then we'll never speak of it again. I could still hear the storm outside. Still see the faint flicker of firelight coming from beneath the door. Everything in me was screaming. No, yes, run, stay, don't move. I didn't know who moved first. Maybe it was me. Maybe it was him. But the space between us vanished, and for a moment, everything was heat and confusion and breath. And then, a noise. The unmistakable crunch of gravel. Headlights swept across the bedroom wall. A car. Pulling into the driveway. We both froze. He stood up fast, like the moment hadn't just happened. Like nothing had. She's early, he said, voice sharp now, panicked. My heart was thundering. What do we? Get dressed, he said, already halfway to the door. Don't say anything. And then he was gone. I stared after him, trembling. What the hell had just happened? I didn't move. Downstairs, I heard the front door slam shut. The jingle of Mom's keys hitting the ceramic bowl by the entryway. Her footsteps on the tile, deliberate, damp from the rain. Rick, she called. You left the porch light off again. My chest was rising and falling too fast. I could still feel the heat of Dad's breath near my face, the way his fingers had trembled against my skin. He hadn't touched me the way a father should. He looked at me like I was someone else. Not his son. I wanted to scream. To run. But where? Into the storm? Into her arms, just to watch her face break when she found out what he'd done? What I'd let happen. I heard her shoes clatter to the floor. Then another voice, it's calm, casual, like nothing had happened. You're early, he said. Thought you weren't back till Sunday. They canceled half the sessions. Roads were worse than they thought. Her voice was tired, normal, unaware. I stood by the window, peeking through the edge of the curtain. Her car was still steaming from the drive, taillights glowing faintly in the downpour. I'll take your bag, Dad offered. She laughed softly. You're in a good mood. I missed you, he said. A lie, coated in syrup. It made my stomach turn. And then, a knock at my door. But barely there. I backed away. You decent? Dad's voice. Low again. Measured. I didn't answer. The door creaked open anyway. He stepped in slowly, closing it behind him. His shirt was buttoned now, his face smooth like polished glass. She's going to bed, he whispered. She's exhausted. I didn't say anything. I was still in the same clothes. I hadn't moved. He looked at me the way someone looks at something delicate, like it might break or disappear. I shouldn't have come in here earlier, he said. No apology. Just a fact. But I did, he continued. And you didn't stop me. My throat tightened. You're my dad. His jaw twitched. You think I don't know that? I shook my head, trying to think. Then why? Because I see you, he said, voice rising an inch above a whisper. The way you look at things. The way you need. You think I don't know what that's like. My mouth fell open, words caught behind a dam of confusion and shame. He stepped closer. I didn't back away this time. I've lived with this thing, my whole life. Pretending. Faking it. His eyes flared. And I tried to bury it. I married her. I built this house. I gave you everything I could. You gave me fear, I said. And silence. He flinched. You think that was easy for me? Watching you grow into something I could never be? Free. Untouched. Untamed. I felt dizzy. What are you talking about? I'm talking about you, he hissed. How you walk around this house like you don't know what you're doing to me. My skin went cold. I didn't do anything. You exist, he growled. And that's enough. The words hit like a slap. Leave, I said. Now. He didn't move. I'll scream, I warned. He stepped closer, his hand lifting, but not to touch me. Just to hover, like he couldn't decide whether to cross the final line. You won't, he said with terrifying certainty. And I didn't. 'Cause he was right. I hated him for it. The room was too quiet. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. And beneath that, another sound. A creak. Not his. Not mine. From the hallway. We both froze. Rick. Mom's voice. Sleepy. Uneasy. Is someone in there with you? Dad's eyes widened. He turned to the door, hand on the knob in a second. Just checking the window, he called. I thought I heard it rattling. The pause. The sound of her slippers against the hardwood, inching closer. I heard voices, she said. Is he awake? My breath hitched. Dad glanced at me, eyes pleading. Just talking, he said. He couldn't sleep. Mom was just on the other side of the door now. You two talking? At this hour? I stepped forward, my voice cracking. Yeah. Just talking, Mum. Another pause. Then gently, oh, keep it down. I'm going to bed. Her footsteps retreated. We stood in silence for what felt like hours. Finally, Dad turned back to me. I shouldn't be here, he said, more to himself than me. You were here, I whispered. And that's the problem. He opened the door slowly, the hallway now dim. Don't tell her, he said, not turning around. She doesn't deserve that. I stared at his back, words boiling in my chest, none of them useful. Then maybe you should tell her. He stepped into the hall and closed the door softly behind him. The quiet that followed wasn't peaceful. It was suffocating. I sat down on the bed, staring at the floor. The storm outside had calmed. But inside me, everything had shifted. He was my father. And he had kissed me with his eyes. The house was too quiet now. I sat there in the dark for a long time, listening. To the settling creaks of the walls. The refrigerator hum. My own breath, uneven. Even the storm outside had given up. All that remained was the thick, damp air left behind. Like the tension never left, just shifted somewhere else. My fingers ran absently over the bedsheet, tracing folds, gripping fabric like it could anchor me. I couldn't sleep. Not with that last look he gave me. It wasn't remorse. It was unfinished. Thought of her. Just a few feet down the hallway. Wrapped in blankets, dreaming, trusting. What would she say if she knew what he was? What I had almost let happen. I rose and moved to the mirror above my dresser. Switched on the soft lamp beside it. My face looked unfamiliar, too pale, too hollow around the eyes. My lips were cracked from biting them. I looked like someone who had just been touched by something invisible. Something wrong. And yet, the sound behind me. The floorboard. That same one. I turned sharply, half hoping, half dreading. Nothing. A whisper. Barely a thread of breath through the wall. Not words. Just movement. Presence. I opened the door slowly. The hallway yawned before me. A strip of moonlight sliced through the shadows from the window at the end. Her door was shut. The nightlight inside flickered dim yellow beneath the frame. But his door? Open. Just a crack. Like he wanted me to see it. Like he wanted me to come in. My stomach turned, but my feet moved anyway. I approached slowly. Each step another betrayal. Each inhale tighter than the last. I reached the door. My knuckles grazed it. I could have knocked. Should have. But I pushed instead. The door groaned open. He was sitting on the edge of the bed, shirtless, the lamplight behind him turning his silhouette to something sculpted, something soft and brutal at once. He didn't look surprised to see me. Couldn't sleep either? He asked, voice gravel. I didn't answer. I keep thinking about what I said, he added, eyes fixed ahead. I hate myself for it. I leaned against the doorframe. But not enough. No, he admitted. Not enough. Silence again. The tension swelled back into the room like water rising in a sealed space. He still hadn't looked at me. Then he said it. I thought maybe, you came in here for something. I blinked. My heart hiccuped. What would I come here for? I asked. His eyes finally met mine. There was nothing fatherly in them. I don't know, he said. But you came. My body was shaking. I needed to know if it was real, I whispered. And was it? I didn't answer. He rose from the bed, slowly, carefully, like approaching a wild animal. Like he knew we were on the edge of something. He stood in front of me. Not touching. Just near. His hand lifted halfway, then dropped. His voice came softer than ever. I dream about you, he said. The words landed like ice on my neck. My mouth opened. Nothing came out. I dream, he continued, that we're not who we are. That you're not my son. That I'm not me. And it feels like a relief. I took a step back. He didn't follow. "Do you hate me?" he asked, voice trembling for the first time. I looked at him. At the man who taught me how to ride a bike. How to patch drywall. How to fear myself. "No," I said. And that was the worst part. I turned and walked out. Back to my room. Door shut. I curled into bed, pulled the blanket up over my head, like I was a child again. And I cried. Not because he'd hurt me, but because part of me, some desperate, hollow part, had wanted him to. And I didn't know what that meant. Morning came, and with it, a hollow silence. I woke to the scent of coffee drifting up the stairs, the sound of Mom humming some forgotten song in the kitchen. The house felt too normal. Too bright. Like the storm hadn't just passed through, like everything hadn't just changed. I stood at the window, staring out at the drizzling rain, the world outside washed in gray. My fingers gripped the frame, knuckles white, as I tried to make sense of the nightmare that had blurred into something worse. I wasn't sure what I was waiting for. A sign maybe. An answer. Something that would pull me from this madness, this confusion. I heard footsteps behind me, slow and deliberate. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. He didn't say anything at first, just stood there in the doorway. I didn't turn around. Couldn't. Not yet. "You up early," he finally said. I didn't answer. "I've been thinking," he continued, his voice low, softer than I remembered. "About last night." My chest tightened, but I didn't move. My body felt paralyzed by the weight of it all. "I should never have," he stopped himself. "But I did. And now we both have to figure out what happens next." I felt the heat of his presence behind me. His scent was the same as it had always been, cigarette smoke and aftershave, but now it felt different. Contaminated. I could still feel the heat of his breath on my neck from last night. I didn't know how to escape it. How to stop feeling it. "You think this is easy for me?" he asked, almost pleading now. "You think I'm not terrified?" I finally turned around. There he was, standing in the doorway, face lined with regret, but there was something else too. Something I couldn't read. His eyes were desperate, searching. "Terrified of what?" I asked, my voice cold, but trembling beneath it. "Of what you almost did? Or terrified of what you know you've become?" He flinched as if my words had physically struck him. "I don't know," he said quietly, more to himself than to me. "I don't know how I ended up here. But I'm not. I'm not the monster you think I am." I didn't respond. I couldn't. Instead, I walked past him and down the stairs. Mom was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping her coffee. She smiled at me, but there was something in the air that didn't feel right. Something missing between us all. I sat down at the table, feeling their eyes on me. Dad lingered by the doorway, standing like a shadow, waiting for something, anything, to break the silence. "I'm just trying to get through today," I finally said, my voice thick. "That's all. I don't know what to say." "I don't know what you want me to say." Mom looked up, frowning. "What do you mean, Rick?" I didn't look at her. Couldn't. "I just don't know anymore," I murmured, glancing at Dad. His face was unreadable, but I could feel the weight of it pressing down on me. Like he was waiting for me to say something more. Something that would make all of this make sense. But nothing made sense. Not anymore. The clock ticked on, and the house seemed to hold its breath. Suddenly, the front door creaked open. My heart jumped, expecting it to be someone else. But it was just Mom's friend, stopping by to say hello. The world kept moving. People kept talking. The sun kept rising. But for me, everything had stopped. Frozen. Stuck in that one moment, in that one room. I caught Dad's eyes again. The unsaid things between us heavy, like the air before a storm. "I think we need time," he said softly, to figure this out." I nodded, not trusting my voice. That's all we had left. The rain hammered against the windows. A constant drumming that blurred the world outside, making everything feel muted, contained. It was the kind of night that felt like something was going to break. I didn't know what, just that it wasn't going to be good. The house was still. Too still. Even the usual hum of the refrigerator seemed distant, almost forgotten. I sat in my room, staring at the glow of my phone screen, unable to focus on anything. The wind howled outside, rattling the branches of the trees, but it didn't matter. None of it did. Not when the silence between my father and me was louder than the storm. Mom was gone for the weekend. A few days upstate to visit her sister. Dad had been quiet ever since she left, too quiet. It wasn't like him. He would have been drinking his beer in front of the TV by now, cracking jokes, maybe arguing with me over something dumb. But tonight he wasn't in the mood for small talk. And he wasn't downstairs with his usual tired, easy smile. I hadn't seen him for hours, and that was strange. I rubbed my eyes and stood up. I couldn't sit there forever. The house felt too big, too empty. The tension in the air made me restless. I opened the door to my room and stepped into the hallway. The silence was thicker here. My bare feet barely made a sound on the cool wood. I glanced at my dad's room. His door was slightly ajar. A crack of light spilled out, the dim glow of his desk lamp spilling over the floorboards. It was strange, too, how that small light seemed to make the house feel colder. I couldn't tell if I was imagining it, but there was something off. Something waiting. I paused, staring at the door, suddenly unsure of myself. The house felt like a maze of whispers and half-formed thoughts. I thought about walking down to the kitchen, maybe grabbing a drink or something. But instead, I found myself inching closer to the open door. Closer to the place I knew I shouldn't be. I pushed it open a little more, just enough to peek inside. Dad was sitting on the edge of his bed. His back was to me, his shoulders hunched like he was thinking too hard. He hadn't heard me yet, and I almost wanted to slip back into my room, pretend I hadn't seen anything, but I couldn't. Something about him tonight felt different. Vulnerable. Almost like he was waiting for me. His voice cut through the stillness, low and hesitant. "Rick, you're up." I froze, caught in the soft, warm darkness of his room. I could barely see his face, but I didn't need to. I could feel his eyes on me, even in the dark. "Yeah," I answered, my voice unsteady. "Couldn't sleep." He nodded, though I wasn't sure he even saw me. His eyes were fixed on something far away, his fingers tracing the edge of a half-empty glass on his desk. "It's been a long day," he muttered, like it was some kind of excuse. But there was something else in the air now. Something that wasn't just the storm outside. Something thick and electric, like the moment before lightning strikes. I swallowed hard. "Dad." He turned, finally looking at me. His eyes were darker than usual, more intense. There was no smile. No words of comfort. Just waiting. And in that moment, I knew something had shifted between us. Something had cracked, and neither of us knew how to fix it. "Rick," he said softly, his voice shaky, "I need to talk to you." My heart stopped for a moment. The words hung in the air like a threat. I wanted to say something, anything, but the weight of his gaze held me in place. The door was still cracked, the room cold, and my father's words hung between us like a secret neither of us was ready to share. But I was here now, and it was too late to turn back. The evening sky was thick with clouds, pressing down on the house like an unwanted weight. The rain had started earlier, quiet at first, then growing heavier, until it filled the air with the scent of wet earth and the soft slap of droplets against the windows. Inside, the house was calm, too calm. It always felt that way when Mom was gone. The hum of the refrigerator and the low murmur of the television were the only sounds that filled the space between us. I sat on the couch, legs stretched out, trying to relax, but my mind wouldn't stop racing. The routine had been the same for years, Dad sitting in his armchair, beer in hand, flipping through channels with little interest. Mom away, and it was just the two of us. It should have felt normal, comfortable even. But tonight, there was something else in the air. Something I couldn't name. I glanced over at Dad. He was sitting in his usual spot, his eyes glued to the TV, but there was something different about him. Something I couldn't place. His face looked older tonight, his features sharp and weary, the weight of years settling on him in a way I hadn't noticed before. He wasn't smiling like he usually did, and his posture seemed stiff, like he was waiting for something, or someone. The ticking of the clock on the wall seemed louder in the silence. I fidgeted, trying to push away the discomfort building in my chest. Was it just the storm? Or was it something more? "Dad," I said quietly, my voice feeling strange in the quiet room. "You all right?" He didn't look at me at first. Just stared ahead, his thumb absent-mindedly turning the bottle in his hand. Then he set it down, slowly, as if every movement took more effort than it should. When he finally turned to face me, his eyes were darker than usual, filled with something I couldn't quite read. "Just tired," he muttered. "You know how it is." But it wasn't just that. I could feel it in the air, an unspoken tension hanging between us. I shifted uncomfortably, unsure if I should break the silence or let it linger. I thought about Mom, upstate with her sister. She'd be gone until Sunday. The house felt emptier than usual, her absence stretching out like a void. But it wasn't just her absence that made everything feel off-kilter. There was something else. Something unspoken between me and Dad, something I couldn't put into words. The clock ticked again. Another minute passing in the stillness. Then, Dad cleared his throat, his voice rough when he spoke. "You're gonna be here for the weekend, right?" he asked, but there was an edge to his words. A hint of something, an urgency? A fear? I nodded, but the question felt odd. I hadn't even thought about it before, but now it seemed like it mattered more than it should. "Yeah, of course. Where else would I be?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling, as if trying to decide something important. The moment stretched out. Then, without warning, the silence was broken by the sound of a door creaking upstairs. I froze. Mom hadn't been gone long, but I hadn't heard anyone come in. My heart beat a little faster as I tried to ignore the sudden rush of panic in my chest. Dad didn't seem to notice. He just stood up slowly, his hand gripping the edge of the armchair as if trying to steady himself. "I'll be back in a minute. Just need to grab something." He left without another word, leaving me alone in the darkened room, with the faint scent of his cologne lingering in the air and 1,000 thoughts swirling in my mind. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change, something I wasn't prepared for. Something neither of us could undo. And for the first time in a long while, I wasn't sure if I was ready to face whatever it was.